Not yet, okay. 701.
Okay, are you sending the link that you got from Mark, the videographer?
I sent the link that was in the invitation. That webinar.
Oh, I see, I see.
Yeah.
They joined under your name. That's why I'm confused.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Hi everyone, Maggie here. I'm changing my name.
Oh,
Right.
You don't want to be me, believe me.
Hey.
Oh, Maggie Loesch. Hi, Maggie.
Hi, how's everyone doing?
You.
Hey.
Oh, here we go. Hi, Ben.
Hey, good evening, everyone. I'll change my name to Ben also. We're flooding the room with Roseanne's.
So, Ben Schwed, Maggie Loesch, I think Maggie, we saw a few minutes ago, they are the project managers, just to give you a little bit of a background. So about January of 2024, we had a fatality at Father Capodanno and Lincoln Avenue. Kind of a perfect storm because the driver wasn't speeding and the motorist was walking at the corner. There was no crosswalk at the time, but we believe they were both not paying attention. So the pedestrian was, I think, looking at his phone. He had headphones on, which is the worst thing to do. He didn't hear the car coming. The driver of the car may have been distracted, maybe looked down or something or other, because he didn't even, and he wasn't even speeding, but he hit him at an impact where he died. He passed away. So, we've been really good as an aside since that crash. We were good until October of 2024, and we have been battling an onset of pedestrian crashes and fatalities. And many of them are happening on Highland Boulevard. Seniors, so we started Triple E Task Force, which focuses on education, engineering, and enforcement. We work with our engineers at DOT, our safety education team, and all of the precinct commanders and the borough commander, Melissa Egger. So we have a meeting actually Wednesday morning to deal with these crashes. So in light of that, after the crash had occurred on Lincoln and Father Capodanno, I went out there with Captain Perez, who was the captain of the 122 at the time, and we looked to see, what we can do at that corner. So the always stop was put in, but then we wanted to go further than that because we happened to see a resident that just happened to be outside their house. And she lives off of Greeley, and she expressed a lot of concerns about people walking from Greeley across, Father Capodanno, dragging their beach chairs and their coolers, going to the beach, and there's really no safe way for them to cross. They're not going to walk to the corner with all their stuff and all their gear. And she did talk about, some speeding people get to the end of Father Cap and they kind of swing around that little curve over there. So there was a couple of things. There was a no standing any time that had been installed many years ago along Father Capodanno in front of the those townhouses. She was concerned because when her husband gets home from work, lady parks across the street and has to walk across the street. So our next phase of this step to address Lincoln and Father Cap will be to address the end of Father Capodanno. So I proudly turn everything over to Maggie and Ben, and then they'll talk to you about our project. I want to just also mention that we did have a meeting with the borough president's office and Councilmember Carr's office, and they were supportive of this project. So I want to bring it to you to see what we can do to get your support. So Ben, Maggie,
Great.
turn it over.
Yeah, thanks, Roseanne, and thanks everyone for having us tonight. So good evening. My name, as Roseanne said, I'm Ben Schwade. I'm the acting deputy director of the safety project and programs team at New York City DOT. I'm joined by Maggie Loesch, who's the project manager for our Father Capodanno Boulevard project. So just a little bit of background. Roseanne was saying this, the team that we're on at DOT, we work specifically, we follow the data and work on the streets throughout the city with the highest rates of injuries and specifically severe injuries and fatalities. And so part of what our team does is looks at every fatality that happens anywhere on New York City streets to try to figure out what was going on, what happened, and whether there's something we can do to make it safer for everybody. So as Roseanne mentioned, this kind of project came out of the tragic fatality that happened on Father Cap about early 2024. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and let me see. Yeah, I can share my screen. That's great. So I'm going to go ahead and share this and walk you through our presentation for the corridor. All right, let me make this full screen. Can everyone see this?
Not yet,
Oh,
not yet.
not yet?
No.
Then let me know when it comes up.
Uh,
To the right. Sorry. Whatever you did.
try that again. It's on top. Yeah, there we go. Okay, we got it, Ben.
Okay, great. All right, thanks. Thanks. All right. So we're gonna be going through our presentation today for like we talked about, Father Cap from Midland Avenue to the kind of end, the turnaround at Miller Field. So this portion's it's about the last quarter mile or so of Father Cap, like I said, from Midland Avenue to the end at Miller Field, passing through by Lincoln Ave and Greeley Ave. It's a mainly residential area with a lot of recreational access between the park and the beach and the boardwalk. There are senior centers in the area. And unfortunately, there was that tragic fatality in early 2024. In the past couple of years, DOT has made some safety improvements at individual intersections here at Midland and Lincoln Ave that we'll talk about in a second. And both portions of Father Cap here have 2 travel lanes in each direction, as well as parking lanes on the curb. Because Father Cap dead ends down here, we see really low traffic volumes overall. The vast majority of the traffic volumes on Father Cap here have already turned off or turn off at Midland Avenue. And so what we're looking to do with this project is kind of really build on the previous work that we've done on the corridor to make it safer for all road users, for drivers, for pedestrians, for cyclists on this part of the roadway. So we looked at the crash history on this part of Father Cap, and of course, the fatality is what drove this investigation. And we haven't seen a ton of crashes overall on this portion of the corridor. There have been 4 crashes with injuries in the last 5 years, about 1 a year. But then, of course, there was that fatality. So to kind of understand what has been happening, we looked a little bit further back, going back to 2017, to look at get a better sense of the types of crashes that happen here on Father Cap. And we see that all the vehicle crashes that we've had in that time period involve either rear ends or side swipes. So when vehicles are crashing into each other, it's always kind of been a situation where someone has been driving too fast to react to someone in front of them, or aggressive driving, the types of driving behavior that leads to these rear end and side swipe crashes. So as we said, there was unfortunately this tragic fatality in January of 2024 on this portion of Father Cap, where we had a pedestrian trying to cross to get over to the beach side of the street at Lincoln Avenue, and they were hit by a driver. As Roseanne said, both of them kind of seemed like maybe they weren't paying as much attention as they should have been. But it's a really tragic situation that we want to be able to address through the design of the roadway tonight, to make sure that even in situations where people aren't paying close attention, that those mistakes aren't leading to fatalities. In response to that fatality, DOT implemented a couple of short-term improvements. The first was we made it an all-way stop sign at Lincoln and Father Cap. And then we installed crosswalks on the north and south sides of the intersection so that pedestrians have a safe way to get across the street here, to get from east to west across the street. We also launched an investigation into the conditions of the corridor to see if there are kind of more comprehensive safety improvements that we could implement, and that's kind of what we're coming to you all with tonight. Just a little bit more background before we get into the roadway. A few other things that DOT has done in the past couple of years along this portion of Father Capodanno. At Midland Avenue, you can see in this top photo in the top right, we added a painted median tip extension. So that's just kind of our paint and those 2 little yellow plastic posts you can see. And what those do is they make it so that pedestrians crossing the street here have a refuge in the middle of the street where they can stand halfway through a crossing, wait for vehicles, but also it crucially just kind of encourages drivers turning onto Father Cap to take the turns at a slower and safer speed, so that you're not cutting the corner when you turn, but you're just turning at a little bit of a sharper angle, and making sure that you're yielding to pedestrians who are crossing in the crosswalk. At Lincoln Ave and Father Cap, In 2023, DOT installed painted curb extensions on that corner. You can see that in the bottom right-hand side of the screen right now, where just again are painted and these plastic posts. And really what that did was to shorten those crossing distances across Lincoln Avenue, and again, kind of encourage it so that if you're driving and turning, making the right turn from Father Cap onto Lincoln, it's just a little bit of a tighter turn that you take at a slower speed, again, kind of improving yielding, making it safer for drivers and pedestrians at those interaction points. And then, as I mentioned, following that fatality, we also added that always stop and crosswalks at Father Cap and Lincoln. So when we started looking at the corridor overall, one of the things that we noted was that for this portion of Father Cap, it's a wide street. You have 30-foot wide roadways, kind of on either side of the median down here, with these low traffic volumes. And one of the things that we see anywhere in the city is when you have a street that's really wide and you don't have and you have low traffic volumes on a wide street, it just encourages you to drive faster, even without realizing it. You end up the street feels wide and you drive fast. And especially in an area that's residential, that has so much pedestrian access between the beach and the park, we want to really encourage people and drivers to be going at safe speeds for these residential areas. For pedestrians in this part of Father Cap, we see really long crossing distances because of the wide roadway, because of the existing grassy median in the center. It's about 75 feet for pedestrians to cross Father Cap to get from one curb to the other. That's a really long crossing distance for what is the kind of the end of a street. And it means that when you're crossing Father Cap, there's a lot of time where you're exposed to potential turns or drivers going through on the street. And so that exposure time really is time where there are potential conflicts. And so one of the things that we want to do through this project is kind of shorten these crossing distances for pedestrians. We also see down here a kind of a lack of bike facilities on Father Cap, connecting cyclists to and from the existing bike network on Midland Ave to the opportunities on the boardwalk and in the park. Currently on the one block between Midland Ave and Lincoln Avenue, if you're going southbound, you can see in this photo, there's our shared lane markings, which are used to kind of designate a space that cyclists are encouraged to be in. And they're on the left-hand side of the left lane, which is a really bizarre and uncommon situation that we really don't see anywhere else in the city. And so what it means is that if you're a cyclist, you're supposed to be riding on the left side of the left lane, which is a place that cyclists don't feel comfortable riding. If for those who ride bikes, you almost always are to the right side of traffic. And if you're a driver, you're not expecting to see a cyclist on the left side of the left lane here. South of Lincoln Avenue, we also see that there's no further bike connections connecting cyclists to those who are trying to get to Miller Field. So you have that weird bike connection between Midland and Lincoln, and then no bike connections to the other recreational destinations at Miller Field. So getting into our proposal for the end of Father Cap here, you can see the existing conditions on the top here. Father Cap has two lanes in each direction, separated by that grass median, and then has parking allowed on each curb. Our proposal is, as you can see in the bottom, is to take Father Cap from 2 lanes in each direction to 1 lane in each direction for these last few blocks, and add parking protected bike lanes so that cyclists are able to safely access these destinations. And by doing our protected bike lane, what we also do is we move the parking from directly adjacent to the sidewalk to be what we call our floating parking lane. So where it's between the bike lane and the travel lane, forming the buffer that will protect cyclists while they're in the bike lane, but still allowing people to park on the corridor. The protected bike lane will also give us the ability to add a lot of additional safety benefits to the roadway that will make it a lot safer for drivers, for pedestrians, as well as for cyclists. And so one of the things that we really like to talk about when we're proposing protected bike lanes in the city, is that a protected bike lane is not just a treatment for cyclists. Obviously, the bike lane is good for cyclists and those who are coming down to this portion of Father Cap to get to the beach or the park. But they're also really beneficial safety treatments for everybody on our streets. DOT did a study a couple of years ago looking at pedestrian safety in the city. And one of the parts of this study, we're looking at all of the treatments that we've done throughout all 5 boroughs, looking at their impacts on different groups of roadway users. And so when DOT studied all the protected bike lanes that we had installed, we saw that it's one of the most effective safety treatments that we have in our toolkit for everyone. And specifically, it's a really effective safety treatment for our more vulnerable roadway users. You can see the numbers here. I'll just run through them really quickly. But you see for all users, there's about a 15% injury reduction and a 16% KSI reduction. KSI is killed or severely injured. So those are for fatalities or like severe injuries, which are kind of like those life-changing injuries that we really are striving to eliminate on our streets. And so we see when we install protected bike lanes, those numbers drop for everybody on the street. When we look at pedestrians, we see that those decreases in injuries and in those fatalities and severe injuries are even greater, about an 18% reduction in injuries and nearly a 30% reduction in fatalities and severe injuries. And then when we look at senior pedestrians, we see that KSI reduction, that fatality, those killed and severe injured numbers, those are reduced by almost 40% for senior pedestrians where we install protected bike lanes. So we see that where we're installing protected bike lanes throughout the streets on all 5 boroughs, we're making senior pedestrians and we're making all New Yorkers safe, not just those on bikes. So what is this going to look like? This slide shows a lot, but I want to just kind of run through what it will actually, what it will look like. Quick question: can you all see my cursor when I'm hovering it over?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, great. That'll make it a lot easier for me to show you where I'm pointing at. So this is Father Cap from Midland Ave to the end. And you can see kind of this is an overhead view of what will look like. So in green on the curbs in both directions, you can see the protected bike lane alongside the curb. And so what our protected bike lane does is it gives that curbside safe route for cyclists, but it also organizes the roadway. So instead of having cyclists on the left-hand side of the left lane where they're riding in the roadway here between Midland and Lincoln, they're off to the side and you don't have to interact with them as a driver down here. It also means that, and then you're limiting your interaction points. It also means that when you're crossing the street as a pedestrian, instead of having to go across 75 feet of Father Cap, you cross one travel lane, then you have a new median tip, and then you cross one travel lane again, and then the bike lane. So your crossing is broken up into these shorter crossing distances where you have opportunities in between, making it much safer for everyone crossing the street. So we also are proposing, as part of this, a painted curb extension at the intersection of Father Cap and Greeley to help shorten the crossing distance across Greeley Ave for pedestrians. And again, kind of encouraging, making sure that when you're turning off of Father Cap onto Greeley or off of Greeley onto Father Cap, you're just doing it at a slightly slower and safer speed, not zooming around that corner, to make sure that you're having a safe interaction between the bike lane, the crosswalk, and drivers. At Lincoln Avenue, where we added that new crosswalk, we'll be adding these painted median tips to both crosswalks across Father Cap. Again, to kind of make sure that turns are happening at safe speeds, people are yielding and not whipping around the corners, and giving pedestrians a safe place to rest in the middle of the crossing. For the residential houses on this part of Father Cap, we'll of course be maintaining access to all of their driveways as part of this, and I'll show you an example on the next slide. And then the protected bike lane, in addition to organizing the roadway, kind of tightening it up a little bit and to kind of reduce the speeds that we see sometimes happening here, will provide bikes with that safe connection between the existing bike lanes on Midland Avenue and then access to the boardwalk and the beach, at Lincoln Ave, as well as to Miller Field and the parks, and the park down at the end of the street. So one of the things that I get to say on this project that I don't get to say on a lot of the projects that I do at DOT is that this project will actually get to add parking. Because of the existing regulations on Father Cap, we're working with our borough engineering team to kind of standardize, to update the regulations to be more reflective of what makes sense now as opposed to what maybe made sense years and years ago. And we're looking to be able to add about 20 parking spaces to this portion of Father Cap, just by putting in that floating parking lane and updating the curbside regulations. That's because most of this part of Father Cap does not actually currently allow parking. But with this change, we'll be able to add parking on the street here. One of the things that happens with our protected bike lanes is we talk about reducing conflict points with between cyclists, pedestrians, and drivers. And so as part of the protected bike lane, what we do is we introduce treatments at all of the locations where cars may be turning across the bike lane. And you can see two examples of this on the one on the bottom right-hand photo, something that we do at intersections, which is install what we call daylighting treatments, right? So it's something that we install approaching the intersection to ensure that no cars are parked right up at the crosswalk. And so that if you're a driver and you're going to make a turn across the bike lane, you have a clear line of sight to the bike lane to make sure that you can see if someone's coming, and that you're making sure that as a driver, you're yielding to cyclists who are using the bike lane, making those turns and those interactions much safer. At the residential driveways that we have here, we do that with a little bit of added our markings, which just make sure that if you're pulling into or out of your driveway, you have a clear line of sight, both of the bike lane before you cross it, but then also of oncoming traffic. So these are the types of treatments that we do at intersections and at driveways to make sure that we are not precluding any turns. Everyone can still make all of those turns, but that they're making them safely across the bike lane and have clear visibility of cyclists. So here's an example of a similar project that we installed in Queens recently, just to get a sense of what this will look like on the roadway. As you can see, on the right-hand side in green, you have the curbside protected bike lane, which provides that safe, dedicated road space for cyclists and helps to organize the roadway. You can see here the example of what we call the floating parking lane, where drivers are parked just between the bike lane and the moving lane to provide that physical protection for cyclists and to help narrow the roadway so it doesn't feel as wide open, it doesn't encourage as much, and so it discourages speeding. At the intersection, you can see our quick curb, our plastic posts that we install to, again, make sure that any drivers turning across the bike lane and crosswalk have a clear line of sight, so that we're having safe interactions between cyclists in the bike lane, pedestrians in the crosswalk, and turning drivers. And then you can see the shortened crossing distances that you get when you're crossing the street with a protected bike lane, where you have this, instead of having to cross these additional 20 feet or so of roadway where cars may be coming, you have this space that's kind of in line with the parked cars, and then you have the bike lane, kind of reducing that exposure to drivers coming on the street. So it makes it safer for pedestrians, it makes it safer for drivers, and it makes it safer for cyclists. In terms of timing of this project, Father Cap, then this portion of it is scheduled to be repaved this fall in 2025. And so what we would do is we would coordinate with that repaving so that when we put down the fresh new asphalt, so it's smooth for everyone, we would put in this new markings plan at that time. When we do that, in addition to the signs that we post for the repaving, we would also be posting and distributing through the community board and elected officials these informative signs that kind of make sure that people are aware of the new markings and the new plan that's coming onto the corridor, and providing some guidance for people trying to park, to kind of show them that they should be using the new floating parking lane as opposed to parking next to the sidewalk. And so those will go up before the new markings work start, as well as be distributed to make sure that everyone knows what's going on. So just to sum up this proposal, we're really looking to calm traffic and enhance safety for everybody on this portion of Father Cap, to make sure that we don't see a repeat of the tragic fatality that happened last year. We'll remove the second travel lane to reduce speeding on this portion where we see that we have really low traffic volumes, and so don't need 2 lanes to accommodate the number of cars that are on this portion of the street. We'll add that painted curb extension at Greeley Avenue to slow turns onto and off of it and shorten the crossing distance there. At Lincoln Avenue, we'll be adding those median tips, the painted median tip extensions to provide that refuge for pedestrians and again, kind of encourage those slower, safer turns. And then of course, adding the parking protected bike lanes to make a safe cycling connection, organize the roadway, and allows us to add approximately 20 new parking spaces as part of this project. So thank you all for your attention. I'm happy to answer any questions that I'll stop sharing my screen, but happy to answer any questions that you have at this time.
Thank you very much. Before I open the floor, just if something can be expanded a bit, it mentioned a low traffic volume. Also, there was a reference to the southbound traffic on Father Capadonna, how it's more inclined to make a turn at Midland Avenue before it actually reaches this stretch. I don't know if anyone would object to measures to improve pedestrian safety, but if any objections do come forward, typically regarding reducing down to 1 travel lane, that creates congestion. Based on the information here, it appears that that's not a factor.
No.
This is an underutilized roadway.
And that's what people are speeding.
Okay.
There's not, it's open wide, and people can make those turns around that, by Miller Field. They can, and I met with Captain Perez out there after the fatality. He said exactly that. He said the problem is that it's the end of Father Cap. So especially at night, these kids are swinging, speeding around there because they have all that roadway to do
So
that.
if there's any volume, it would really terminate at Midland Avenue in that stretch.
Exactly.
It is
And
really
Lincoln. Sometimes, a lot of cars go down Lincoln as well.
Okay.
Yeah, but that portion,
Yeah,
Yeah, and just
of that potential objection, what are
Yeah, just to add to that, before we do any of these projects, we collect volumes. So we've collected traffic volumes. We have our traffic engineers look at it to make sure that there won't be any impacts to congestion. So, it's one of those things that anecdotally people like Rosanna's saying, we've talked to some of the residents and we see that, but we also do collect those volumes of vehicles. And when we talk to our engineering team that looks at all these sorts of projects, it was the quickest conversation I've had with them. They saw the numbers and they said right away, they're like, these are low volumes. We have no concerns about any impacts to congestion here.
Okay, any questions?
I have a few things I'd like to say.
Please.
Number one, I'd like to point out that the pedestrian who was killed was a lifelong alcoholic who was drunk and possibly intoxicated on drugs at the time he was of the crash, and no doubt had a big effect on that. So I think that's very important when considering that we've done major changes as a result. A more effective change to prevent pedestrian deaths like his would have been to build new rehabs instead of changing our traffic.
oh, that
flows.
wouldn't be our responsibility, yeah.
That is how this particular
Right, but-
pedestrian
but
died.
If I could just say, pedestrian fatality is a pedestrian fatality. So,
Okay, but the
in our-
result,
yeah.
the cause should be reflected in there.
Well, he was walking across the street and he wasn't paying attention. Whatever his condition was, I don't know. But he was walking across the street without any crosswalks or any protection. So,
I would like to say that regarding the bike lane, along that area, you do have bike lane along Father Cap in the boardwalk area
Yes.
that actually cuts through the park. So it's not like this will be an additional bike lane.
Well, this is a recreational area, so what you have is you have a lot of people, a lot of bikers that are coming down that way. They're cutting through Miller Field and then they're connecting, which is where I always walk. They're connecting at the ends of Miller Field, where the softball field is over there, and then they're continuing. Some of them do, but I have to be honest, I see groups of people riding bikes on Father Capadonna. I mean,
Okay, not that often.
I do see them.
I would like to say normally, probably the extra parking would be welcomed. However, I believe one of the reasons the parking was done away with in this area is because this is a beach area. So as it is, during like the softball season and everything, that area from the circle to Lincoln Avenue, people do park. And usually the cops leave them alone because they're parked there for their kids' games and stuff. But that way, when the games end and by 10 o'clock, if there's somebody parked there, the neighbors can call and complain to the cops because you don't belong there. So now we have a permanent homeless shelter there also. So these are where the people that are going to be visiting this homeless shelter are going to be parking. So I don't think the residents are going to welcome this additional parking because it's a
you're wrong.
problem area,
I
not.
think you're wrong because we spoke to the residents. Captain Perez and I spoke to 3 or 4 homeowners right there. And they begged us to get rid of the no standing anytime regulations. They said they don't like to
Okay.
park across the street and walk. They're afraid at night. So we're also, I also look at some street lighting improvements because it is a little dark. But we talked to 3 or 4 residents that live there, and that was what the feedback we got from them. They said we have to
Well,
park.
I'll be
across-
very
Because
surprised
let's
because
face it, if you
usually,
live on that street, you don't want no standing in front of your house. If you have visitors, you want people to be able to park there, right? You don't want them to have to park across the street.
that has not been the complaint. Normally, we've had more people complaining about people being parked there that don't
Yeah,
belong.
all right, well, that wasn't what I heard, but.
Steve?
Did you contact anyone in the Department of Motor Vehicles? Because that's where the driving tests start. Right,
Yes.
where
Yeah,
your
but I
bike
think
lane.
Ben actually looked at that, Ben.
So we're still getting in touch with them, but we're maintaining all of the access and parking for the driving test, so that won't be.
Well, you're not, you're gonna have a lineup of cars starting on Lincoln Avenue,
Mhm.
going all the way down around the circle and all the way up the other way, almost to where I am on Iona Street on a morning when they're taking a driver's test. So now you're gonna go a quarter of a mile down of parked cars, as you're saying, okay, I'm going to Hunter Avenue with cars that are taking a driver's test.
There's a civic organization there. You can go and address the civic organization if you think the community is very welcoming to it.
Well,
Yeah.
the feedback that I have gotten, where exactly is the driving test?
It's
Exactly what you're talking.
From
Yeah.
Lincoln Avenue back to, I guess,
Yeah.
about Greeley, from Lincoln to Greeley along Father Capadano.
Yeah,
on the
it's-
beach
From
side.
Lincoln to
Yeah,
Greeley on
it's-
the east side.
Yeah, and we're aware of that. We're
Yeah.
aware of that and planning to
Okay,
make
the
sure
only
we're
other thing
coordinating
I
with
got
them.
to think about here was you're saying that it's a low access road for turnarounds. Well, we have 3 major schools on Father Cap, okay, on Iona, Quince, by Graham. We have 3 major public schools with school buses. 2 o'clock in the afternoon, forget about Father Capadano Boulevard. That turnaround is probably very important, okay? I don't know, I never followed a school bus, but there are tons of them there.
But we're not taking away the turnaround.
They're
though.
taking away a lane.
Yeah, but there's no volumes down there.
Well, I don't know. I never watched how many school
No, but
buses.
we went down there, well, let me just
Okay.
explain, when
Okay.
we do our counts, we do them in the AM weekday, we do them in the PM, we do them on weekends. We don't just, specifically on a Saturday morning, like we try to get a picture of all of the different
I'm
periods.
just trying to say that.
No, I
You
understand,
must look
yeah.
at the
Mhm.
beginning of Father Capadano to think that you are just closing up a little end that nobody uses. Because we have back to the beach, we have a
Yeah,
soccer
but we're
field,
not closing.
we have
we're
a
not-
cancer
We're
walk.
not.
This way
closing.
we'll have,
You're
we'll
restricting.
have, semi trucks parked down at this end, the same way
No,
they have.
we have more events at the beach that most people don't know because they don't go there, okay? We have a cancer walk. We have a marathon that comes and uses this turnaround as a marathon. What are you gonna tell them? Only use 1 lane?
No, but what I'm saying is, but we're not affecting that. What we're doing is, we're providing parking where there's not parking. So people that do come down there, for whatever the reason might be, they're gonna have additional parking. We're not, right, let me just back up.
All right,
When they did this project, we made sure that they went out there and they looked at the volume. They did a lot of studying when they went out there and they collected these volumes. So there's one thing that we're not gonna do is we're not gonna shut down a road and create major traffic congestion. That's definitely not what we wanna do. So from our calculations and, from our collections, and again, we went various times of the day, various days of the week. We wanted to make sure that, whatever volumes you have there, that we're able to handle them and we're able to control the traffic. And there is hardly any volumes down there. Hardly any.
Just on the
And
circle,
that's the
there's not
reason
a
why
lot of
people-
volume.
Well,
no.
there is
No,
on,
there
a
isn't.
party like back to the beach.
Yeah, but that's.
Yeah,
further
but there's
down.
not a lot of, even
on that
then,
end.
because this is just, she's talking people who come down Greeley and flip around the circle fast to avoid instead of making the left on Patterson
Yeah,
in the
that's what
morning.
they,
That's
yeah,
when
that's
it
what they
is.
do. So down where those events are taking place, because I go to the back to the beach, that has, it won't not affect that part of.
But we're gonna
Yeah,
have
well,
tractor trailers.
Well, no, it is going to affect the traffic of all the cap because a lot of people use it as a turnaround. I do. When I'm going out and.
Yeah, but it's not, but the volumes are getting low, so it's not gonna impact the volumes.
So it's South Beach South Beach where there's no traffic, where there's all this parking.
like
You have
further
tons
down?
of tractor trailers. That's what's
Yeah,
parked.
that's
So
another.
now we're gonna have them parking by us.
Why would they be parking right there?
Why are they parking at South Beach? Because there's a long spot with open spots, spaces.
They're not gonna come down that way,
Based on what?
based on the fact that there are bike lanes there. And there's not enough room for them to park on the curb.
There's no,
They
you're not
shouldn't-
supposed to be
first-
parked there either.
That should have happened, but that's not really, that section of Father Capodanno where they're parking, there's no markings down there. So they can park there, there's no parking lane.
No, it's
markings.
illegal for them to park.
I
on the streets
understand that. What I'm
overnight.
saying is they can park there, meaning that they feel they can park there because there's nothing delineated there. There's no like lanes there, there's no parking lanes there. So, and that's a whole other problem that we're dealing with PD on, so,
The one thing I'll just chime in really quickly with that as well is, with parking is always something that we're flexible with, right? So if we go ahead and do this and we see that there are things that we can always make adjustments,
Yeah.
we never implement a project and then just say, all right, we did it and walk away.
I mean,
We
if you- if
continue to
parking-
monitor.
the availability
make-
of parking becomes a problem, we can remove it.
Well, you got 7,000.
They told us you could change the
Yeah.
circles. That was never changed.
Well,
Every
that's a
time
little
they,
different, because that's a little different, because that's actually construction that has to, these are just markings.
okay,
That's what
on Seaview Avenue, where you guys came and did that, there's, a parking spot in the middle of the crosswalk.
No,
That
we've
still hasn't been
corrected
changed.
that, we've
When
corrected
was it
that.
corrected? Because I was there a
Just
month
like
ago, it
last
wasn't
week.
corrected.
But I don't know why is parking even in discussion? You have 7,000 parking lots down there. The
Well,
whole
but the
beach area is
problem,
parking.
the issue though, is the residents down there. They only have, for up until now, they're only allowed to park on the beach side. So they have a driveway, and if they have guests or they have people coming, they have to park across the street. There's no parking in front of their house on across the street from the
But I
beach.
think that we all
There's no
have
parking
guests
on the beach
come
side either.
and they
There's nothing.
park in front of my house when my
There's,
guests come, they can't.
they have no parking on
The
either
parking
side.
But they're not going to have
Yeah,
that
but they're not
parking
gonna
either.
park, they're not gonna park in that lot and walk across the street to come home. You're talking about the parking lot, that's
When
like
you
lot
say
9?
guests, I'm not talking about the primary resident, they come and they park in the driveway. When you have extra
Well, I
guests, you
mean,
say, honey, can you
listen.
park across the street and walk over?
We're,
Because
we're okay with the
Yeah.
parking. I mean,
Yeah.
if the parking is excessive,
Doesn't bother
we
me
can
either.
remove it,
it doesn't
so.
bother me either.
Yeah, I have a
Doesn't.
recommendation. We
So-
could put this up for committee, vote, but it may be more productive if we can get more supporting information regarding volumes and also, our ability to revise some of these, parking mandates, before we present it for board recommendations. This will be delivered at the next board meeting. I had the assumption going into this meeting, it was confirmed that any objection would be grounded in inconvenience. I think if we just had more specific information.
So what would you like? Would you like the traffic volume that we
Yeah,
collected?
because if there's minimal risk of ever encountering congestion, I
There
think
won't
that
be.
that'll suppress
Sure.
that objection.
Then you could provide.
That
the
little
numbers.
circle has no congestion.
Yeah.
Nobody's saying that
But
there's
we can
congestion.
get
Don't get
volumes
We will
for,
give you those
we'll get
volumes.
you
Bob.
all
In
the
terms
volume
of
data. That's
whether
easy.
Wait, hold on, Ben, what did you say? I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
we can provide the volumes for this
Yeah.
part that we
Okay.
have. Yeah, absolutely.
And then any objections as to whether or not the design for parking is a convenience or an
I just texted you.
inconvenience. If we have the ability to revise that design, I think that would certainly
Well,
help alleviate.
I mean,
some
what
of
we
it.
would like to do, yeah, you definitely have input on the parking design.
Yep.
What we would normally like to do is, we could definitely, tone it down a little bit, scale it down.
Yep.
Most people love parking in their neighborhood. Anybody would jump up and down if we gave them 20 parking spaces in their neighborhood. But if this is something that you feel could be a problem,
I
then
think on the beach side, they might not. I will talk to the people who live in that block. But as far as I'm aware, I believe the parking was removed because it was problematic.
well, that was many years ago, I think. That was like, I think Captain Perez said that was back in like the 80s or 90s.
And guess what? Now we have a homeless shelter again.
Well, yeah, as I said, listen, if you object to the parking, then we can,
I would like the
Yeah.
opportunity to talk to the people who live in that block
well,
and see
yeah,
what they
sure, I
think.
mean,
Yeah, that's a flexible part of it. We can change the
Mhm.
regulations, we can remove them. I mean, it's a rare opportunity to get to add parking, but I understand the complexities here,
The
so
speed bumps
happy
and what they
to-
did in Lincoln already messed up most of the traffic. This will not really affect traffic at all. It's just whether or not it's a good idea to have the parking spots there.
yeah, I mean, if parking is the issue, we don't have to provide the parking spaces.
Yeah, so the bottom line is if we can just kind of make a few edits before the presentation goes before the board, I don't think we should see any strenuous.
Absolutely, just,
objection.
we'll get you the numbers, we'll get you the volumes, if you wanna come back with some recommendations as far as the parking is concerned. If you don't want all those parking spaces, that's fine too, we can definitely minimize them, so maybe not 20, you want 10, or you want 8, or whatever. Ben, is that okay? We can definitely redesign the parking.
yeah, I mean, we don't have to have
Yeah. We
parking.
thought that you would, we thought that might, yeah.
What would the,
People
how
want
would that
parking.
lane
When
be
we go to
used?
neighborhoods, they're like,
Though,
they want parking.
That would be
how would
cool.
that lane be used if it wasn't used for parking? That.
Well, right now it's used for vehicular traffic, so the motivation
But do you
is
wanna
to sort
cut
of-
that down?
Well, we would
Right.
have to,
So-
Ben would have to redesign that.
Yeah, we would adjust the design. I mean, we'd probably stripe a lot of it out with just kind of paint and to channelize it. We'd probably put some
So I would like to talk to
physical,
the
we'd probably
community
put
there
some
to see if they
physical
would like that.
barriers.
Yeah,
You
we'll
know,
get the input from you.
Well, at the very, regardless of anything that we do with we'll for sure maintain the parking for the DMV for the road test. But but kind of the rest of it, it's if you all would prefer to not include parking, like, we're open to making to looking into those adjustments.
Yeah, we're
Okay.
very flexible. This is just markings. So we can do channelization. This is the first I've heard in all of the years I've been borough commissioner that people don't want parking because everybody loves parking. But I understand why. I get why you're doing that. So as I said, we did present this to the borough president and to the council member Carr. And just to clarify, so council member Carr is still reviewing presentation. He knows that we were coming here today. The borough president didn't have, we had received no negative feedback from the borough president's office. His representative actually liked the project. So, again, Councilmember Carr is reviewing it, but yeah, we can make whatever changes you want, because we want this to work. This is.
Well, I will talk to them on the block, and if they
Yeah,
would
let
like
us
that
know.
parking, I
Let
will.
us know, but let us know soon, because we'd have to redesign this before the GB meeting, comes up. Your general board meeting.
before
the
May 20th.
Yeah, so we would wanna give us some time to just revise some of these slides. But
The,
again, this,
the other thing that I could just with that, we could come if you want us to come, like if we need to come back to the general board, like we can also just say that we're still finalizing that, right? This was our proposal and we're continuing
Yeah.
to discuss that with
Yeah.
you all, like if it's
We-
not
we want
finalized
the
in
community
that
to
time.
be happy with this. We don't want to, we want the community to be supportive. We did a lot of work on Seaview Avenue. And Dr. Ardolik, president of the Staten Island University Hospital, was very happy and very pleased. We did a ribbon cutting. He loved the whole design. It took some while to get used to. Because in the very beginning, that all the markings were down because the weather was bad. It was November, and you can't put the thermoplastic markings down when the weather goes below a certain temperature. Plus, we had the no parking signs up so we can complete the work people parked anyway. So that led to a lot of confusion because we couldn't complete the markings before the season ended. We've now completed the markings. Dr. Ardolik couldn't be more supportive of it, and he said in fact, a lot of his staff has actually told him they feel safer crossing because now we have that signal at that mid-block crossing. So we're really happy about that. But as far as this is concerned,
Well, since you're here, can we address another thing regarding Lincoln Avenue and a previous project?
sure.
You said that you were doing removing the parking, putting in the parking for the school. That's why you were going to one lane. So the problem is now
Mhm.
on Highland Boulevard from, Boundary Avenue to Highland, that it becomes now 3 lanes.
Yeah, I take that every night home.
Okay, so the problem is the vast majority of people are going into the 2 left lanes to go
lanes,
left.
Correct,
But a lot of cars do go straight.
right,
Now, because they usually before they used to get over before boundary and get into the far right lane and they could cross. Now they cannot because that is 1 lane, so the traffic is backed up much further because the people who want to go straight
Mhm.
cannot get over.
Yeah.
So it would be past the school, but if we made that no parking, we turned it to no parking from boundary back,
boundary to the school,
right?
okay, we'll take a look at that,
Cause then
Yeah.
it would increase the flow much better.
yeah, okay. So Lincoln from boundary to the school, we'll definitely take a look at that, I take that every night,
Because a
Under
lot
the
of the
rock.
cars, I mean, a lot of times when there are no cars parked there, people will kind of make their own lane and go into that and go straight.
so you're saying you want that lane to be open, nobody should be parking there, I don't see a lot of people parking there when I get home at night.
Sometimes they're not, but every
Yeah,
now and then when
I
you have a
know, 'cause
car,
I
it makes
actually-
it much worse.
I actually look at that when I drive home.
So people they make their own lane there, which
Yeah.
is not what you're supposed to do. But when there are cars parked there, which isn't a lot, but when they do park there, sometimes they've been parked there because of the construction.
Yeah,
But when they do park there, it backs up the traffic much worse.
yeah. Sure, I haven't seen that, but I'll take your word for
You
it.
go past the precinct every day when you're on the way home?
Oh, yeah,
So in other words, from Midland Avenue to Newdorf Lane takes you about 45 minutes?
no, it doesn't take it that long.
No? Oh, 6 lights and you're still looking at White Castle.
Yeah, so this is an exercise in improving public safety, not parking, so that
No,
certainly. isn't a-
well, that, we let's keep that in mind, I'm glad you brought that up, because that is, the main focus of this is the safety,
Yeah.
that's all the main
Yeah.
focus is. And again, just to wrap up, so if you want to get back, because as I said, we need some time to revise this before the general board meeting. But if you want to do some outreach to Greeley Avenue folks and people, especially on Father Cap,
Well, not really at Father Capodanno.
Oh, Father Cap, right.
When we're worried about.
so the people that we spoke to, there was 2 residents, there was the homeowner and then the tenant, and then there was another homeowner that asked for the parking to be back. So. if you
And they
wanna-
were Father Capodanno residents?
Father
or-
Capodanno residents, yeah. So those little brown townhouses, I guess there's a block of them. There's
Yeah,
about
2 blocks, yes.
3 or 4 residents, because Captain Perez said, hey, they're out here, let's go talk to them. So we went out there, we talked to them, and we. spent
I'm very
about-
surprised, but if
we
I'm wrong
spent-
about that, I will.
We spent about a good hour, because then, of course, they saw Captain Perez, and they brought up other enforcement issues. But no, we did spend a good hour with them, but I have no problem if you wanna come back, but again, I think Ben and Maggie would need some time to do some changes. If you wanna reduce the parking, we can, as Ben said, we can do some channelization there, just to sort of, make them go around that turn a little safer. And that if people are crossing from Greeley across the street, they don't have to worry about cars whipping across in front of them. So we will definitely be able to look at that. Just give us some time, because we're gonna have to change that.
Okay, all right, so we'll move on, because we have a Knicks Celtics
Okay.
game, so that we have.
All right, so we're gonna bow out. Thank you for your time. Ben, I wanna thank you, and Maggie.
Yeah.
No, we're actually now going to tabling it, so.
Did you have-
We're gonna go to the general board meeting. I would just ask for you to get back to me.
Excuse me,
This
he
is-
has a question.
Oh,
I'm
okay.
sorry, I have a few questions, I'm sorry. So you guys, the point of this design is to hopefully enforce for slower speeds in that area, right?
Yes.
My question is, let's say this doesn't work out, right? What would DOT do next? Would they start to put up like speed cameras, mobile cameras there?
I mean, I don't know.
Or
I
ask
don't-
patrol- for increased patrol? I'm just wondering, like, how?
No, so what we would do, for what we would do is when you say it didn't work,
Yeah.
we're confident that it will, but we could make design changes as we go along, because there's always post-project monitoring that we do.
Yeah,
As
okay.
far as there being, we have no plans to put speed cameras down there. And as far as the enforcement, that's something that PD would have to work at, but
Mhm.
we're always willing to say that if we go out there, again, we do a lot of studying when we prepare these projects. But if we go out there and we say we were wrong about this section, we have to make this change, or we have to put parking or take away parking, we're willing,
That's my next question, so what's the
driving.
threshold for like calling this redesign a success? How do you?
Well,
what's-
I mean, Ben, you can answer that question. Do we go back like in 6 months or 5 months? What do we normally, or do we monitor continually?
A little bit of all of that, you know, so our standard, like the ideal time that we look at projects is the 3 years before and the 3 years after in terms of injury data, right? That's what we typically are looking at. It's a little bit it's a little bit different in this case because this was following a fatality, right? So ideally, we're seeing nobody getting seriously injured, and of course, no fatalities here. But it's continuing to look at the crash data. It's continuing to make to make sure that people are using the roadway as intended, in terms of how they're getting around, how they're going through it. So but mostly it's looking at, are we making people safer, right? That's what it all comes down to. So we're looking at, are crashes happening, are injury, and specifically are those crashes that cause injuries happening?
And then why wasn't like a signalized crosswalk considered instead of just redesigning that?
So you mean at Lincoln?
Right. at
Yeah,
Lincoln.
so our signal contract has been, not yet have been finalized, so the Office of Management and Budget, OMB, which controls our funding, has basically,
Oh, no.
not been, let's just suffice to say that our signal contract is still being reviewed. So our signal installations are pretty backed up. We have a sort of somewhat of a backup on those. So what we wanted to do was something really immediate here. So we put the stop signs up because that's something we could do quickly.
Mhm.
So we'll go back and we'll look at it to see if I don't think we need a signal there because we
Okay.
have one at Midland.
Mhm.
But I think that we needed a stop control because I am not supportive, and I've said this at many, many occasions, I'm not supportive of putting a crosswalk in without a stop control. Because people think they can cross and people are gonna stop.
Mhm.
So it's not Jersey Shore down by the beach where you have those little signs up, stop for pedestrians, everybody stop for you. Right? Not here. So we had to put some kind of a stop control in order to put a
The
crosswalk.
last question is
Sure.
the bike lane, right? And just to come up with what you were saying, it's near recreational areas, right? Why wasn't it considered having like a raised or off-road path for those
There is
bike
already
lanes?
an off-road path there.
Yeah.
Well, there's one on right by the boardwalk. Actually, there's one, if you go down Miller Field, you probably know.
Yeah.
Go through Miller Field and
Right.
then there's
But
the
now we're doing
cobblestone path. and
protected
then-
bike lane, so couldn't we have just done more raised or off-road?
Well,
pathways,
we're
or-
doing, we don't own the property inside the boardwalk. That's the Parks Department.
Mhm.
So we don't control what happens within the boardwalk. What we want to do is we want to get people safely from Midland Avenue
Mhm.
if they want to go to the boardwalk. So this is a way to get them to the boardwalk, or if they just want to simply stay on Father Capodanno to the very end, connect with Lincoln Avenue to School Road.
Mhm.
This is the way to do that. We don't do any work inside the boardwalk. So from the
Right.
parking lot to basically the ocean, but that's all Parks Department. So we don't control anything inside that.
Did
New
you
York
happen
City
to- did you
hates
happen to
cars, they
notice
just, it's about
the,
reducing, slowing traffic, it's not about conveniencing bikers.
Did you happen to notice the ballards that are on between Hunter and Midland,
Between Hunter and the bollards
on
on,
the street, closing off a good section of giving those homeowners part of the street?
why am I not familiar with that?
I'll tell you what happened years ago, okay? A woman parked the car in front of her.
You're
house.
talking
I
about the
followed her.
concrete dividers, you
They're
know
called
how when you're
ballards.
coming
When you
down
stop-
Father
Jersey
Capodanno?
barriers?
Yeah,
Oh, the
no.
Jersey barriers. Yes, I know what that is about.
Okay.
Those are crash barriers that were put up. I think somebody
Because
got.
somebody got mowed
A
down.
woman
I think it was
opened the
a woman
door
with two
to,
children.
a
Didn't her-
woman
did all
opened the
three of them
door
get killed
on the
That was, yeah,
wrong
it was
side
like
of the
30 years
car,
ago.
Instead of twins or something.
traffic
Mm.
side
Yeah.
with a baby, and a car came down and hit the door and killed her and the kid. So what is to say that that's not going to continue to happen a little bit further down? Now you're pushing the parking out in
Yeah,
to the
but-
street.
There's also a barrier. There's also, it's the parking and then there's a buffer lane. So it's not gonna be opening up your doors and you're gonna be inside of traffic. Yeah,
All right, well, that caused a lot of,
yeah, that was a lot. And you know, I have to be honest. I'm not crazy about that design. I have to be, yeah, that's a little confusing. 'Cause you have to, if you wanna go off, turn down, you gotta go down to sort of the local access portion. And I always get confused, cause I'm on that road every night
Really?
coming home. So
And
it's a
what I
little bit,
believe-
but you know what? It's working because we haven't had any fatalities, since then. So it's working. We just got, it's something to get used to. but-
it's just weird. It's
Yeah,
like the
it's a little
street
bit
stop.
strange. It's a little bit strange. You know what it reminds me of on, yeah. So,
Yeah.
go right ahead.
Yes, we do have participants
Sure, go
online.
right ahead. Yeah, I know,
Sal?
we go with all that.
Sal
Go
has
ahead.
to identify himself.
Oh, Sal, can you identify yourself and then ask your question? Sal iPhone online.
Bishop?
Yep, he's still there, waiting for him to talk.
Can you unmute him?
Yep, I did. Who's that? Amazing. Okay, yep. he's
Can you
unmuted.
hear me now?
We can hear you. Yep.
Hi, I'm Sal 140, co-president of the Midland Beach Civic Association.
Welcome.
Hello?
You have a question?
Yeah, I have a question. I'm from Midland Beach. I live in the condominiums on Father Capodanno. This will affect the homeowners 1000%. We don't need a bike lane coming down Father Capodanno. How's sanitation gonna plow our road here?
So
There's
we
no physical
consult,
barrier
we consult with this Department of Sanitation.
Yeah,
They'll be able to bring their plows right down the bike lane and right down the travel lane, no
And
problem.
all right, so my homeowners that are parked in the street on Father Capodanno are gonna be plowed on the right and left side of their car. Not only their driveways will be plowed. I live on Father Capodanno. I speak to every homeowner on Father Capodanno. They don't want no bike lane in front of their house. They don't want to be parked in the middle of the street. 80% of the cars that park in the driveways pull in and they got to come out backwards into Father Capodanno. Now you're going to go to a bike lane, pass a parked car to get into the oncoming traffic to get out of their home. It doesn't work.
Do you guys want the additional parking across the street on the park side 24 hours a day?
No, we do not want the park there because that brings they go into the park late at night. They stay there at 2 o'clock in the morning with
That's
the
what I'm
radio and
saying.
the music.
I didn't think you guys wanted that.
No, we don't want that
or
there.
do they go into that empty huge parking lot 9, or do they actually? sit
No,
on-
because NYPD locks that. NYPD is supposed to lock it at 10
They don't
p.m.
lock, they don't lock it at night.
During times
Yeah,
when
they
they had
do.
trouble, they
Cat-
actually had
Yeah.
police
Inspector
lights
Carroll,
that are-
listen,
Yeah, I've actually spoke to PD and they don't lock that.
I speak with Inspector Karuba. They do lock it. We did it all last Sunday. Captain Perez has nothing to do with our community.
I understand that, Sal, you don't have to.
You spoke to one homeowner. You got a dozen now. You got from 1144 Capodanno to 1239 Capodanno. Them homeowners do not want a bike lane.
Okay, Sal, you may have heard me said before that we could definitely eliminate the parking. We said that before.
I'm not talking about the parking. They don't want to park in the middle of Father Capodanno in front of their house and
Right.
park in their driveway because some people have two
Right.
cars coming
Right.
out in reverse into Father Capodanno to get into an oncoming traffic lane is going to be a lot dangerous.
All right.
Last year we spoke about putting a stop sign on Greeley Avenue in Father Capodanno, open the guardrail to make a pedestrian walkway going into the beach area. So you would have two stop signs.
Yeah, and I think the problem is the stop signs are only like a couple 100 feet, not even between each other.
Well, then they stop. Then they slow down and they don't race to the end of Father Capodanno to come back around because there's another stop sign there.
Yeah.
We do not want a bike lane on Father Capodanno. Every homeowner will be at the community board 2 meeting when they're going to have this opposed because they don't want it. They pay the taxes on Father Capodanno. They pay their taxes there. They don't want a bike lane and they don't want a car parked in the middle of the road.
Well,
And you do have a lot of traffic. You come here in the morning, everybody's going down Greeley Avenue, making a right on Capodanno to go to the Verrazano Bridge. Everybody don't turn down Midland Avenue. They go to Lincoln or they come down to Greeley and they come to Highland Boulevard.
It's not like a ton.
Yeah, it's still not a lot of volume.
You don't have a lot of volume. In the morning, you have a lot of volume going around the circle. Then you got motor vehicle doing a road test.
Okay, I know that, Sal, and we've looked at the volumes, and the volumes that are turning onto Greeley in the morning to go to Father Capodanno, they're not causing any kind of traffic congestion there.
We don't want Seaview Avenue in front of our condominium homes on Father Capodanno.
Well, okay, so then we don't have to put the parking lane there. That we'll have to
Yes,
see what
Sal, if
we
you
have.
do me a favor, on the 20th, when we
Yeah.
have our general board meeting.
Yes.
If you'll sign up for 2 minutes during the public speaker session.
Sure.
Yeah, I'd like for you to kind of express your view, or if there's someone from your community that would like to
Well,
express that.
actually, I'll probably be there. My president of the community civic would be there. The president of the Oceanwood Condo Association will be there.
Good. Perfect.
All right, so just do me a favor, just organize, those points, present them, because the public session will be before it goes up for vote.
Right.
So if you can kind of share that with us from the floor, it'll help our other board members sort of get the full perspective. So if you'll do that for me,
So can you remove the bike lane from that one side of Father Capodanno where the houses are?
There's no bike lane there.
I don't know if we would be able to do that.
No, that's in the plan I meant.
We don't want a bike lane there. First of
I
all,
know, but I'm saying in the
The
plan.
problem is that you may not want a bike lane, but that is a very heavily biked section of Staten Island, it's Father Capodanno. And I've seen them myself. There's a lot of volumes of people riding bikes, mixing in with people that are driving, which is not safe.
But if it's
So-
on one side, why do you need it on the other side of the road?
You mean starting from the side of the beach? We'd have to, Ben would have to take a
You,
look at that.
well, you gotta be able to go both, like, this, ultimately, this is a safety treatment, right? So, and we want to, it's both safety and access, right? So in terms of making the street safer, removing the bike lane would not, like, that's the safety treatment that allows us to get in these elements of that make the street safe.
Channelizes traffic.
Right, so we would not be open to, we can remove the parking, that's fine, we're happy to make adjustments, but the protected bike lane is ultimately the tool that allows us to make the street safer for everybody.
And again, we want to take your input. There was a fatality here, so our first priority is going to be how to make it safer. We will take your concerns. We will listen to you with an open ear, but at the end of the day, there was a fatality here. So we have to make that decision. It's not just that we want to put a bike lane here and that's gonna be the end of it. There was a fatality here. So at the end of the day, it becomes our responsibility to make that safer in any way that that we feel there is. So you can all speak at that.
Perfect. Good, that works.
Yeah.
Can I just make one last comment, and this
Please.
is all I'll say?
Yeah.
I totally understand what DOT is saying, but based on the conditions that led to this fatality, there is no guarantee that this wouldn't happen again.
There's
That
never
people would
guarantee.
not be
No, we
paying,
can never
putting their phone, wearing headphones,
And
and they
again,
might
this
still
is,
get
we
hit.
can never guarantee, no matter what we do.
To mitigate this risk. and
We
this
have
is
to
the
try to
purpose.
mitigate the risk. We have to try to minimize the risk. We can never guarantee that there
No,
won't be
I
somebody
hear
else.
that,
crossing.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
for sure. We don't ever do that. But
Okay.
anyway, we're gonna.
Thank you very much.
Thanks thanks for having us. Have a good night, everybody.
Good night. Thank you, guys.
Yes, yeah, please, that's, we need your opinion, so.
No, I'm gonna do that.
Absolutely. Do we have someone for DSNY?
Yep.
Speak about.
Okay.
Sanitation.
Thank you, guys.
So, yeah, so can you give us a full?
Yeah, that was on the forum too. Yes, and will you, at the end of the meeting, I was told to come here to bring up a different issue. Am I allowed to do that at the very end of this? What issue? It's,
It's okay. We actually had a public session that we kind of glossed over, so we can introduce that at the end.
Okay.
That's fine. We'll accommodate that.
Sorry, I just needed a real chair. My back was sore. Incredibly uncomfortable. Okay, DOT had to go first. All right, hi, my name is Marissa Yanni. I'm a community coordinator with the Department of Sanitation. I'm just here to talk about compost and literally answer any questions that you have, compost related or not, anything sanitation related. This is just to give an update. So sanitation, nope, compost, I'm a little tired. Curbside compost collection started in Staten Island back in October. April 1st started our enforcement period. So it is completely mandatory for all New York City residents to separate your food scraps and yard waste from your garbage. So that will give you 4 waste streams. You should have 4 cans practically in front of your house if you include the 2 recycling streams in your garbage. It's not mandatory to use the curbside service. You could use food scrap drop-off sites. I don't know how many there really are. I forgot to look. In Staten Island, that's really more of an issue in like Manhattan and those folks. I think most folks here are gonna actually use the curbside service. So that does start at the same day as your recycling day. You can either use the brown bin that we have, that we sell for about 40, $35, let's say $40, we'll round up, on our website, or you can use any bin you want with a lid clearly labeled. With these, that's why I brought them, clearly labeled, and, yeah, under 55 gallons. I don't think anyone here is gonna get a 55 gallon, those are pretty big. Yeah, so that's basically it, compost. Any
If they
questions?
don't take it on recycling day, that means it's gonna be there for an entire week.
Nope, that means you call me the next day, you call 311, we come pick it up the next day.
No,
They
I
usually
think
send
my
somebody out.
recycling day is Monday,
Mhm.
so like every Monday holiday, we don't get a pickup and we have to hold it for 2 weeks. Like they don't come the next day.
Right,
You're gonna have.
So
to-
it's gonna, but like they won't come because it's just, there's no
It's out.
garbage pickup. Yeah, exactly. So like that's,
we have in recent years, I will say, been picking up more often the day after a holiday. And some holidays, we have been picking up on holidays. I understand you, Christmas, if it's on a Monday, I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah.
Right, but on a few holidays, we've been pulling people to work. But if you do see that happen, you can submit well, not for the day after a holiday, but I will give out my card, do let me know if no one's picked up at all. Normally recycling, you would have to hold it for, but garbage, well, I guess we haven't had a Monday holiday in a while, but garbage,
like
we would.
Memorial Day is coming up.
No, that's fair.
yeah,
Let me see what
yeah.
the Memorial Day plan is. Cause before it used to be, we would get your garbage the next day, hold recycling for a week because your cans are gonna be fine. But now that compost is separated, let me see what that plan is. You're right, Memorial Day is the next Monday holiday.
Yeah.
So let me see about that, because it's this normally, or at least in front of my house, it's the split body truck that has garbage and compost. So if that's the same truck, then we could do the garbage and compost on the same day like that. And we'll wait for recycling, wait for your cardboard boxes. But I will give you my card, which everyone can take a picture of. And you're more than welcome to reach out to me if something like that happens.
Do we know when they're gonna, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Real quick, are you pausing the fines? 2 weeks ago, there was a report.
Oh, that is a little confusing.
What's the?
No. Don't think you're not gonna get a ticket. You could totally still get a ticket. We're gonna focus more on education and outreach, specifically for buildings or residences with 1 to 9 units. That's a lot of Staten Island, that's fair to say. So it's the larger buildings that really haven't done anything. Where I have big apartment buildings in Manhattan, they're like, well, I don't know what composting is. I'm like, well, it's up to your building management to do that. We have a lot of smaller homes here. We wanna make sure you're not getting a ticket. We wanna give as much education and support that we can for you. We're gonna focus more on the bigger buildings, but that is not to say, if your neighbor calls 311 on you because they see banana peels just coming out of your garbage and they're like, you're gross, then, totally.
Well, the questions that we're getting is how stringent are the enforcement measures? There's one requirement that if you've got a container that comes into contact with food like a pizza box, that would need to be integrated into the compost.
Oh, that is,
Yeah, if somebody puts that with their cardboard recyclables, would they be subject to a fine?
no, it really depends on, like, for a cardboard box, for instance, that depends on how soiled it really is. I hope nobody here doesn't eat their pizza and they just let it, that is my card for everyone later, so I didn't forget. I'm hoping everyone's eating their pizza, cause that would be just a crime as a New Yorker if you.
That would be a little bit
Every
aggressive for
pizza
someone to
box has soil on
receive a fine.
Every pizza box has soil.
Right, so if it's soiled, then it's totally up to you. If it's super soiled and really greasy and wet, you can put that in your compost bin. If it's just a couple of grease spots, then put it in your recycling, your paper recycling.
Well, you get a ticket.
I think they're
No,
looking
it's-
for flagrant stuff, like a lot of people aren't even putting out the,
What's
brown.
confusing?
because it shows the pizza box on here, so I have been composting my pizza boxes,
Yeah, you can
and
do
then the
that.
advance
can't be
said
waxy.
you can't.
You can't be
like-
waxy, so
yeah.
it depends on the pizza box,
If it's a cardboard box,
but not if
Like
it has a
from a-
waxy coating.
what pizza box has, like,
Well, some of them have that
Papa
smooth coating.
John's?
I think the ones with the smooth coating you can't do. That's what I've, cause it says
Like the
specifically
Chinese
no
food
waxy
stuff? Yeah,
coating.
yeah.
I got a good one for
that's
you.
not what I've seen, but
come down
then put
like-
it in your paper recycling. You have 2 options.
My only question is, like, say when I do spring cleaning, normally I have one big garbage can, but for regular garbage, but at spring cleaning, I might have 3 garbage bags. So is that a problem? Will I get a summons because I have 2 extra garbage bags that day?
You would, cause you're supposed to containerize.
Okay, even though
Right,
it's
how
a
many,
rare
how many
occasion.
units do you have in your
2.
okay, your 2-family house? Yeah, you have to containerize all your garbage,
But it's
so
very rare, like
And
almost
now for that
90% of the time.
you're not supposed to. You could get a ticket for that. You've been able to get a ticket for that. That's been a long time. It's over a year.
The pause didn't happen, the 2-week pause for compost?
There is no pause at all on enforcement. That's
That's
not,
not what it said.
I understand that, but I work for the department, so I'm just
I
letting you
know,
know.
I know.
There is no pause in the enforcement. You can totally get a
So that was
summons, you
bad
can totally
news?
get a ticket.
You'll still
I
get a
can't,
ticket.
yeah, I can't say that. Who said it? I don't even remember who said it.
The advance had it,
The
yeah,
advance
the
Oh,
advance.
I really don't know why they
Well,
said that.
the advance. I have
I
one
can't
for
speak to
you.
why that was said. That's not in my, that's not what I'm told to say.
In
It's not
Staten Island,
paused at
when
all.
they're looking for nickels and cans, right? They
Okay.
come down my street and they go to the pail, which is recycling, right?
Yep.
And they throw the shit all over the street so they can
Right.
get that nickel out of that bottle that they're taking. Now you're gonna have that happen, then you're gonna have the inspectors come going through the other pail, looking to see if I threw away a ham bone. He's gonna be throwing shit all over my street. My street's gonna look really good.
Open your bags up and throw everything around.
Well, the report said that they were opening the garbage bags and
No,
giving
they will rip
summonses.
them open.
They do.
I didn't
Oh.
say we couldn't rip them open. I said, we're not gonna throw your garbage all over the street.
Well, the garbage men do now too. They empty half of it in the truck and half of it in the street.
When are they supposed to have the trucks that pick up the cans? Cause the thing is, the guys have to pull it out of the cans.
Wait, say
And the
that, say
food
that
gets
one more time.
heavy, the food bags get heavy.
What trucks, I'm sorry, say.
Like, in other words, supposedly we got these special cans because the trucks were gonna like lift the cans for the garbage
I was
men.
just gonna tilt it into the.
But they don't
truck.
have that, so the guys have to like.
No, that's
pull the-
not a mandate till June 1st, 2026. We don't
That's
have
when
enough
we'll
trucks
have
for that.
those.
That's when you'll have the trucks for that. If you bought the bin already, that's great. You didn't have to though.
But in terms of the
Special
vehicles,
pay.
another, I guess, this is misinformation, is that if we're segregating our composting garbage, are there any vehicles that are actually blending that in with the other garbage? Because that obviously is like some of the noise that we hear.
No, it's
We're-
all separate.
We're doing our part, and
they're not.
Garbage
so
is
that-
completely
so
separate
there's
from
no
your
truth
compost.
To that.
If it looks like one truck, maybe because it's a split body truck, so you think it's going in the same spot, but it's two different compartments.
Okay, fair enough. Any questions, concerns? Right, so we can move on. Thank you very much. Appreciate the update. Tara?
Should we the table?
Yeah, please.
Much more comfortable, I assure you. Have a good night, everyone. Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
And please take as many as you need for those.
Just don't
bins.
drive behind any of them trucks. This summer's gonna be a tough one. They're gonna be full of food.
There's nothing wrong with the trucks. They smell perfectly. So-
Oh, they smell great.
All right, Tara, you're up.
All right. Hi, everyone. I'm Tara Das from the Economic Development Corporation. I'm the Assistant Vice President with our Government and Community Relations team. And so I've been working on the Travis Avenue project. So I know it's been several months since we've been here formally. The last time I think was in the fall, October or so, when we came with an update on starting construction Travis Avenue in the spring. It is now almost the summer. We have not started. The reason for that being is over the last several months, we've heard a lot from the community, especially on not only the road closure, but especially the change in timeline. Originally, when this project was first conceived in 2019, it was supposed to be a 12-month project. Now we know this roadway has to be raised. It's incurring flooding. We want to make sure that that's not increasing. We want this to happen, but we also want to minimize the impacts of this project as much as possible on the community. So we've been working really hard on finding ways to reduce the timeline. There are obviously a lot of constraints in this project and how much we can actually affect. You know, we've heard from FDNY and a lot of people from the neighborhood about keeping a lane open and things like that. And unfortunately, we can't do that because of the wetland area. But we can look at design changes to the scope of the project to try to reduce the timeline. We can look into additional worker hours to reduce the timeline as well. So we're really trying to do our best to get back down to that like 12-month timeline at least.
It's up to 2 years, right?
It was, yeah, exactly. And part of the original design and what kind of shifted that timeline out was there are Con Edison poles that got moved. There's kind of like a chunk in the original timeline that would have needed Con Edison to move them, which is also, you know, there's some uncertainty in a timeline that we're not controlling as well. So what we're looking at is trying to shift the design of this work so that we're minimizing those kind of risks. So we've met with the borough president and council member on some of the options, and so we're figuring out some things from their end, but definitely want to come back once we have a more defined path forward on that.
You know, it would help greatly, because
Yeah.
the objection that we get, is really fundamental, in that when we look back at that study that was conducted, we're seeing roughly 24 hours of combined closure per year, as far as flooding events and how frequently the road is closed.
Yeah,
So it's reasonable when someone objects to say that, why should I subject myself to 2 years of closure?
yeah,
When I'm just dealing with 24 hours of sporadic inconvenience? But what we were told, but it was never quantified, is that those rates of erosion are accelerating. Is that each time there's a flooding event,
yeah,
we're seeing more damage done to the roadway, and it's going to reach a point where the road is going to become impassable. We don't really know, is that in 2 years, 25 years? So this is where it becomes very difficult for someone to determine if they're adequately informed, determine
Yeah.
whether or not it's worth 2 years of inconvenience. So
Yeah, yeah.
is there any way that we can gain some perspective into when this is going to become critical?
possibly. I'll take that back for our engineers, see if we can, if we have more specifics on like, what is the timeline for when this is gonna really accelerate. I mean, I know the kind of trajectory we were looking at was like a 10-year timeline or a 10-year outlook, a 20-year outlook. And so I forget the exact statistic, but yeah, I think it was like within the next 20 years, it will be daily or twice a day flooding events or something like that. But I don't know what's like that date.
Funding is coming from the Shoreline Preservation
Mhm.
Initiative, correct? So if,
Right,
we now have access to funding that'll allow us to improve a roadway that would need to be ultimately improved,
Mhm.
it makes more sense to actually complete the project when we have funding secured. So the missing piece of the puzzle is whether or not it's necessary. And that's where
Yeah,
we're sort of caught between both sides of that debate. The other question, and doesn't necessarily have to be addressed at this meeting, we were receiving inquiries regarding the scale of the project, the budget. I know that you had sourced one of our local vendors to do, I don't know if it was the paving, but there was just some question as to how locally based contractors could actually submit proposals for work that is going to be done on that project. So
Yeah.
if we can just have more information in that regard, not quite as important as to whether the project is
Yeah,
necessary,
yeah.
but we just really want to make sure that we're covering all aspects.
No, totally. And on that, we do have DeFazio
Right,
partners that are on board. Yeah, I don't think there will be additional contracts. I think most of those are kind of all set already. But I'll double check on that.
Okay, you got a question?
Yeah, when is this project gonna start now?
I mean, we're finalizing some of these design changes
What
right
does that
now.
mean?
So what that means is, originally, the original project for when it's just a segment of the whole Travis Avenue, Travis Avenue stretch, but one of the things that we
It's the
had.
shortcut. It's the piece that everybody uses to get from Richmond to I live in.
Right, no, what I'm saying is like the raising of the road is
Mhm.
just a segment of it, it's not the entire thing.
Yeah.
But as part of
But
that,
the whole road is gonna be, I don't mean to
yes,
interrupt
yes,
you.
yes, no,
The
yeah,
whole
yeah,
Richmond to Victory
Yes.
will be closed
yes.
for up to 2 years.
Right, but so when we're talking about design, originally, when we're thinking about what is the scope of raising it? We, as part of like the conversations that were back in 2019, there was interest in building out part of it for a future sidewalk, or like preparing it for a future sidewalk. So it wouldn't be adding a sidewalk to the project, but it was preparing for it. What that means is kind of like adding, and this is I don't have the engineers in the room here, so I'm gonna give it my very,
Onto 2 lanes on each side, or
so originally it would be preparing it for a future sidewalk. So it doesn't mean that a future sidewalk is a part of this project, but it means that like there's going to be the foundations there.
yes, I understand.
That was part of the
Okay.
issue though with
Is it
the
the
kind of Edison poles, because that's the part
Yeah,
that
I
touches
get
them.
it, I get it.
So the design changes that we're thinking of is taking or, reducing the load transfer platform so that that preparation part is not there, but it does expedite the timeline.
And
So-
it exists for the future.
No, so the design changes that we're looking into would remove that preparation for a future sidewalk. Now, that's not saying that a sidewalk can't ever go there. It's just saying within our raised shorelines project, we wouldn't have that component. That could mean that like another project, I don't know when, could put those sidewalks
And you're
in,
just
but-
fixing a lane, it's only
not a lane, it's like if, you know, if you're looking at Travis Ave. Oh.
You're not expanding that section of Travis to be 2 lanes and 2 lanes.
No,
Not at all.
See, there was an
Just
issue with the
fixing the road.
DEC regarding the wetlands.
Yeah, the
And it
wetlands,
would be a
they're
very complicated
protected,
approval
right.
process.
Right, it's just raising the.
But do this 24 months, can it be improved by possibly working 24 hours a day with like the overhead lighting that they use in Florida all the time?
So we looked into that. Part of what is challenging with that is because of the nature of this work, which is really intricate, a lot of. You know, like we talked about this with Defasia, like, can we have 24 hours, double shifts and reduce it? And they're like, ultimately, there's that. Because of the type of work, it actually is quite challenging to bring in it's not about the cost necessarily, it's more about, it's challenging to bring in a different crew and pick up where the other one left off.
Okay.
And that does kind of add this risk in, you know, maybe that could create other challenges that would extend the timeline, and we want to minimize those challenges as much as possible. So what we're looking into is having essentially like extended hours. So it'd be the same crew, but instead of, let's say, working 8 hours, it's like, you know, 13 hours plus weekends. And so there's added time there, plus these design changes.
The only reason unless you live in the neighborhood, see what happened at South Avenue, there's all these office buildings that we're sitting in right now.
Yeah.
Okay, and that being said, everybody from that side comes to this side, and what do they use?
Travis Ave.
Exactly, and we've made accommodations with the FDNY, but EMS is still open-ended, so there is a valid concern with residents that, God forbid, if there's a medical event, that we haven't really worked out a solution with emergency medical response.
Helicopter.
Yeah, so this is where it requires some like intensive analysis to make sure that we have that component in place before we shut down that artery for vital services.
It's gonna change the traffic pattern, like everybody's gonna go up to, I think, it's
Pines
Vine
Road, yeah.
and cut
Yeah.
in and go
Yeah.
around. It's just it's a horror.
Yep.
It's really a horror. That is not even the reason that I came to this meeting, but just
Yeah.
knowing and seeing that that was on the docket or the agenda was,
Yeah.
like, because a lot of people don't know that you plan to close Travis for 2 years.
So we can remain in communication, so hopefully
Yeah.
from now until the point we're out of session for the summer, if we can just have some
Definitely,
guidance.
and yeah, and also, we're not gonna be starting construction anytime soon because of all, you know,
What
we're
does that
looking.
mean? Like,
So it means that, you know, once we kind of finalize on, let's say, an alternative design for this, let's say that's our path forward, there are still permitting processes that go into play, and then construction comes after that. So like, at the very minimum, that would mean maybe construction starting like at the end of, you know, towards like the fall, winter, but that is to say if we're getting all these other pieces in place. Like, we're now looking at redoing some of the scope of the project, so that would have to go.
so that this is gonna be on pause, kind of like.
Yeah, we're on pause
Yeah.
essentially, yeah.
Any other questions? Okay, and we are kind of moving the public session. You had another issue.
Yes, I
we're gonna
did.
bring before the-
First of all, I wanted to say, I'm sorry, I was a few minutes late, and I missed the very beginning of this. I kind of was thrown at this. I came from the 121 precinct and, finished up with, detective. And he told me you definitely should go to the community board, and the officers that were responded on Friday evening for the second event, they were insistent, and they were from the 121. Officer Odin and his partner. You have to start with the community board. This, I don't think, is a normal community board. And I kind of knew that, but when I discussed it with the detective, he told me you should go anyway. Get your feet wet. Because he wrote me some notes, and I do have one of the police reports. I'm gonna try to get through this without. I live near 2 schools. And I was a victim of a crime on Wednesday. Both my doors were kicked in by children. And I live by Rocco Loria and the other lower grade school. And I'm a homeowner there, I'd say, almost 40 years, and this is the most, we have had ongoing issues with misbehavior, I want to call it, because they're children. But they're not, they're animals, because they don't listen, they have no fear, and there are no words. I'm here on no sleep.
I'm a cancer survivor twice. My name is Deborah. And they didn't even write a police report for the first incident. I was home. I had noticed that the moldings on my doors were like, I thought they were getting old. They were disintegrating. And I was like, okay, so the door still looks nice. I don't know why these moldings, they were throwing rocks at my door. I didn't know. I just didn't know that was what's cracking. I'm a widow also, so maybe it's because I don't have any kind of a aesthetic background in Home Depot kind of stuff. Anyway, that's what they had been doing. But on Wednesday, they decided to kick in the door. So now I have a broken door that if you ever need a locksmith, Mr. Mencken on Forest Avenue is the man to call. My husband used to use him for, he had investment properties and such. He used to use him for foreclosures when you had to get the marshal and such. Old school locksmith.
Minkle, right, yeah.
Walter was there for me. At first I was in such a panic. I asked the officers, like, what am I gonna do? Because they also kicked in my tenant's door. I broke down the whole door sham. These were 3 kids that had to be, I saw the back of one of them when they were running.
Is this happening to just you or to other neighbors also?
This just happened to, I live at the bus stop. Do you understand what?
I'm trying to understand, right,
Yeah.
why you're being selected.
Okay, other neighbors, like Tiffany on the corner, she has where they bang the fence, they deface the fence. Keeps a can of beige paint, on 24/7 because they're constantly writing all kinds of slurry things. She has big signs that say this is under surveillance. I could go on and on and on. These are junior high kids. Is this on Marymount? Yes.
Can I ask you a question? How come that now you're saying there's 3 or 4 people there, tenants, correct?
No,
Is
no.
there,
No.
how many people are?
There's myself, I am a widow, and my tenant.
Okay,
in
so
my
there's
house.
2.
Our
And
house is where the bus stop
there's
is.
no camera that can get a picture of these kids doing this?
From what the detective just called me up and had me come down, he said, I thought there was a camera on that block. They moved it last year to the following block.
But the bottom
Okay.
line is they're kids, so even if you lock them up, they're back out in 5 minutes
but
to do a
hear me
report.
out.
Yeah, but I'm just saying this way that the police officers will pay more attention to
Okay,
her.
well, here's
that this is
why,
really
here's
happening.
why the detective had me come tonight. Because it happened Wednesday and I didn't give you the other half. So that happened. Police officers came, 5 cop cars, no one wrote a report, which I have an issue with. I'm giving it to the detective, Detective Beal, Jack Beal. I said, I'm gonna let you have some time before I open my mouth to complain about that because you didn't want to do the paperwork. I mean, I might be old school because I have some family that has been in the police department on higher levels and, years ago, it used to be an incident report. Now everything is on the phone. They used to have the little black books. You know what I'm talking about, the notebooks. So you didn't want to write a police report. I mean, it was that day that was like beautiful out. It was a perfect beach day. So I don't have a police report for that. But I went to the school. When I came back with one of the APs, they had been back because now I couldn't secure my doors. You understand? And now there was a knife involved.
Oh,
It was left on the step. And they bought ice cream. That ice cream truck's gonna go. If I die trying, I have lived with that stupid ice cream truck across the street. They sat on my stoop and ate ice cream and left sprinkles upside down. This is horrible. And entered my tenant's home by the side of my tenant. Then after
It took
that,
a while to phase me.
Friday, I thought everything was gonna be, going forward. I was up the whole night with Mr. Minkle. He installed new locks. Gonna give me an estimate on the tenant's door. He's gonna give me an estimate. The tenant's door will be replaced probably the day after tomorrow. Just for safety reasons, because now we need a whole new door frame and the monetary reasons involved. And then, we'll later get one on mine. They came back on Friday between 6 and 10 and threw a rock into my bay window. How I know is I was home. Then I left. My tenant came home and I haven't talked to this girl who lived in my house for 35 years as much as I have in 3 days. Okay? That's how we're both in fear.
they took away our sense of security, you know, like, but anyway, so I told her to text me when she got home to make sure everything was good. She did. I was out. I was at a doctor's appointment. I came home about 9:30 after eating something because I hadn't eaten in about 2 days, and I fell on the driveway. I see like crystal. You know. It's like, oh, you gotta come out here. They brought glass here and broke it. Never, I didn't even think to look. It was the window. 911 again. These officers, which is this report, documented everything and said, this is a crime. I don't know what was in these officers' heads on Wednesday. But we're gonna interface everything. You'll be hearing from a detective. They will be booked. That's not what this is all about as far as I'm concerned. And they will be, they'll have to go before a judge and all this other stuff, which right now, I want my sanity back. I want my safety back.
You mentioned earlier that I guess you picked up on the fact that this wasn't what you expected.
Okay, but hear me out. He told me to come here and tell you that whoever you people are, I guess you're politically inclined. I need support to have somebody call NYPD 121. I need police
Well,
protection during that time when they get out of school.
This is public service committee meeting, but as you can tell, that we are.
I
compassionate
never went to anything
neighbors,
like
that
this.
we certainly want to help where we can.
Send me in the right direction, then why did they send me here?
Well, our general board, which is at the Jewish Community Center on.
I'm very well aware of that.
We actually have a delegate from the NYPD Community Engagement
Okay.
representative. He's there. Obviously, it's
When is that
his,
meeting?
the 20th at 7 p.m.
That's that one you were talking about, May 20th?
Correct. And
Okay.
there's a representative every month. He's charged with the responsibility of connecting with the community.
Okay.
I think that he would certainly be approachable.
I can't wait till the 20th though to get protection during that. Today, the AP, the principal, she's been every day in contact with me because she's appalled. Jessica, Jackson, she sent out 2 male APs that were horrified, and this was on a rain day. They don't act up as much. Where, like, in my opinion, there was only about a quarter of the students. But the bus, they let out at 2:20, the bus didn't come till 10 to 3. That's a half hour of kids all over my front lawn. I don't have to tell you, where do I go to? I've never had to reach out in 35, 40 years. What do I do?
But they did file a report.
Only for Friday. I told Detective Beal. Miss Jackson, the principal, is appalled at no report for Wednesday. Just trivial thing. If I ever did want to put this into my insurance, I need reports for it. I need a police report, which I don't think I'm gonna do because your rate's only triple. But I need a documentation of it so that I could get support and fight my case to get rid of the ice cream truck, maybe move the bus stop, because I've done 35 years or 25 years of this. Move the bus stop. It's beyond your scope. I understand. So who do I speak to? Do I go to Vito Facella's office? What do I do?
You should start with the principal and the local
I'm
police.
working with her on
The
a daily.
police station has school cops. They have cops
You know
specifically
where they were
assigned to
today?
school.
You know where they were? They were up at, because that's what her thought was. She wanted them there today. They were at a meeting at One Police Plaza. Maybe tomorrow they'll be able to. She only gets 2 of them. So she was describing what her constraints are too. But she did send 2 male APs there. So
Would we be able to connect Deborah with our community liaison, who?
just do something,
Our
anything.
meetings, who does the community outreach, for the NYPD.
Jermaine Williams?
Yeah.
Jermaine.
Sure.
That at least
They'll
may
be
help restore some sanity, and.
I mean, can you, I know I'm rambling,
No,
but
no, no,
you
that's
gotta
okay.
understand, this is fresh. It's Wednesday.
You have a ring, do you have a ring? You know?
No,
who the
but
children are?
Mr. Minkins,
You know who these kids are for sure?
no, what happened is I didn't want to give you the whole, because it's a timely thing. 2 kids came forward to me. I promised them anonymity. I said, listen, you're doing the right thing. I thought they might have flipped. Miss Jackson can't give me all the information. Why?
Yeah.
Because they're children, HIPAA laws. And I told her, I understand that, but just give me a heads up. Did they flip on me? She goes, I promise you, she can't even answer. I promise you, we will be sitting in a room with them telling you they're sorry, which after the rock on Friday, 2 days later, I'm beginning to think that they told her that they're sorry and they really aren't, but that's besides the point. I think she has them. With the rock on Friday through the window, I don't know, because Detective Beal told me he thought there was a camera there, but there isn't, so now how do we find out who did that? My bad, I couldn't afford Ring cameras.
Have you had interactions with these kids?
No.
Now it's getting worse because now they're saying that she's going back to the principal
It's gonna
and
be-
she's causing them troubles. So that's
why
gonna
the
that's gonna instigate it even more so.
That's what I'm fearful of, because this happened on Wednesday.
Yes.
By the way, this is a TikTok, Miss Jackson told me, the principal told me, this is a TikTok thing that has gone viral. Not my incident, it's a new thing. Take
Vandalism,
people,
yeah.
throw rocks at people's doors, kick them. I wanna move to Guam. I can't deal with this. This is crazy.
But
I mean,
we're gonna get you connected with Jermaine.
thank you.
And if,
Thank you.
depending on how that goes, he may encourage you to attend the general meeting on the 20th. But that's
No, I'm
really
gonna
the
go
best,
anyway,
the best that we can do.
No, I
because we don't
understand.
have.
So when I go to this general meeting, I'm gonna be able to speak and tell them that there was this crime.
Yeah, but it's gotta
crimes?
be compressed in 2 minutes, because they actually
Yeah,
have,
I
so
will.
if you can kind of get it tight and.
Just tell them tightly that,
Yeah, what happened?
look at these 2 reports,
Absolutely.
and I need
Oh,
protection,
really?
especially between 2 and 3.
Yep.
3:30, and how do I get,
At the very least, it would create awareness for
That's what I
something
need.
that's affecting the community. So if you're,
District attorney's president also.
yeah,
But it's already sounds like they're on it. It's just that the cops were at a different assignment today and it already sounds like they plan to assign them to your property, right? Tomorrow?
I hope so.
Civilian complaint board is gonna be the last step.
What's
Yeah,
that?
no, I don't.
When you,
Yeah.
well, she's gonna complain about the
without
cops.
taking action, yeah.
Well, of course, the cops should have wrote a report the first day.
Well, we don't know what.
Okay, wait a minute.
When they got
This
there.
is, should I write this down, or are you gonna give me
No,
this
you give
paper?
me your phone number, so I'll give it to Jermaine.
What is his name?
Jermaine,
Am I spelling this right?
Jermine. Yeah. that's
Okay,
it.
and what's his name?
William.
What is his name? And what is this? He's
He's
the,
the ambassador for the NYPD, Staten Island NYPD.
I think I heard Miss Jackson mention this guy's name, ambassador for the NYPD for the school.
For Staten Island.
Oh. What is, he's an ambassador for the NYPD?
He's the liaison.
Yeah,
They
well,
just,
that's
they
his
just give him a
title.
fancy name.
Yeah.
Yeah, they gave
He's
him
the
a fancy.
liaison.
I'm
Yeah.
sorry to.
He used to be between the community board and the precinct.
Do you understand that this could be anybody that lives, I happen to live right on the bus stop, right by the school, but it could be anybody, because this is a thing now.
Oh, I understand. And the problem is that they're kids. So really, even if they get locked up,
Yeah.
nothing happens. That's the reality. It's an ugly reality.
Yeah.
All right, well, thank you for coming by, and on that note,
So we'll
meeting
see you on
adjourned.
the 20th at the JCC,
20th is what?
7 PM. It's a Tuesday. It was the third
Okay.
Tuesday of the month.
I'm sorry to take up.
No.